Welcome into another edition of NBA Soundsystem Canada. My name is Gil McGregor. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Kyle Irving. And it's been a while. It is the busiest time in the NBA. So that means it is the busiest time in the year for guys who cover the NBA. And we haven't had the time to treat things with the care and attention that we want to. But today we do. So hopefully you are as happy to hear us as we are as happy to talk to you guys. KI, man, how you feeling?
Feeling good. Like you said, we had a little bit of time off. Trade deadline last week was absolutely chaotic. Had some names moved around that, maybe we didn't expect. Also some names that didn't get moved that maybe we expected to get moved. But it's only been a couple of days. These guys are just starting to make their debuts and kind of getting themselves acclimated to their new teams. Obviously, still some guys that we haven't even seen make it their debuts with their new teams. So I'm excited to get a chance to break it all down and call out our favorite moves from the deadline.
Yeah, you said it. We'll talk about our favorite moves from the trade deadline and get into that a little bit. And there are also some teams, Miami Heat, that surprisingly didn't do anything at the trade deadline. I'm sure their fans are reacting rationally about that decision to not do anything as far as that goes. Before we get into our favorite moves, I will ask you, because you mentioned we've seen some people in their new uniforms. What's been the weirdest to see in their new uniform at the trade deadline or after the trade deadline?
Oh, man. You know what? I'm actually going to start on the other side of that. Like, is it crazy to say that James Harden in a Cavs jersey doesn't look that weird?
It looks normal. It looks,
yeah, I don't know why.
I think it's the Cavs uniforms, probably.
Yeah, maybe that's it too. Weirdest player to see in a different uniform. I mean, I guess because it's hitting close to home right now. The Anthony Simons in the Bulls jersey is looking a little weird just because I wasn't necessarily ready for the Celtics to part ways with him. So that's when that looks a little bit odd to me. Vooch actually looks pretty normal in green. I'm not going to lie. You know what? Hey, I've been around long enough to remember the 2021 trade deadline where I really wanted the C's to go after him or Aaron Gordon, and we struck out on both and ended up with Evan Fournier. That didn't necessarily work out all that well. So he's actually looking pretty normal. I don't know if there's a player that you had in mind. I mean, obviously we haven't seen AD in a Wizards jersey yet, or even Trey in a Wizards jersey yet.
Yeah.
Zoo in a Pacers jersey yet. So yeah, I don't know. Is there anyone that comes to mind for you?
One that was weird, and it's because of the optics of it specifically. But to see Jaren Jackson Jr. in a Jazz uniform while Desmond Bane is in a Magic uniform and they were standing next to each other on the court, that was a weird one. Imagine seeing that photo literally just a year ago today, being like, what is going on with what's going on as far as that? There was another one I was going to say too, even thinking about very random ones, like Gabe Vincent in a Hawks uniform, like when the Mo Gay and Naz Reid situation happened. I saw Gabe Vincent breaking it up. I'm like, oh yeah, Gabe Vincent is on the Hawks now. That's weird. Even Luke Kennard with the Lakers and
that's
the Lakers
a weird one for sure.
It's kind of a weird one too optically. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that again outside of moves that we appreciated just generally look weird. And there's something that's just probably not coming to mind right now.
What about the Chris Paul Photoshop in a Raptors jersey?
Bro, man, I got so hyped and excited. I text you right away. Literally right away. And I should have known. I should have known that wasn't
Gil almost beat Shams to the punch on that one.
Let's go. All of this. You know what? Actually, I'll say this one because I saw it last night. Chris Middleton in the Mavs uniform.
Yeah, that's a weird one too.
He's kind of at that point where he's just a journeyman, which also sucks. Former Eastern Conference Finals MVP, scored 40 points in the NBA Finals 5 years ago. But still, seeing him in a Mavs uniform is dang.
What's funny is I never got used to him in a Wizards uniform. Every time that he would take the floor for the Wizards, I'm like, that doesn't look right. That's not right.
Not supposed to be.
He's someone that honestly, I mean, I know he played for the Pistons before the Bucks, but feels like he should have been, a Buck for life after that. And it's kind of weird how that shook out. But hey, that's conversation for a different day.
Yeah. Anyway, as that goes, now we talked about the weird ones. You and I beforehand, we haven't talked about this or discussed this, but when we were planning for today, we were saying, look, let's just bring each of our 5 favorite deals. We'll list them off and then see if there's any overlap at all or not. So I'm very curious to hear your 5 favorite deadline deals and curious to see how much or how far apart we are in the ones that stood out the most for us. So without further ado, I'll give you the floor.
All right, cool. I'll go bottom up here. Number 5, Jared McCain to the Thunder is one of my favorite moves at the deadline. I really like that move because it's one of those things where, and I know Daryl Morey felt like he sold high on Jared McCain, but it's one of those things where,
he did.
But if the Thunder want your player, you are probably in the wrong for giving up that player. And that's, the level of respect that we're having for OKC's front office at this point. But just to keep moving, Ivica Zubac to the Pacers. I actually like that deal for both sides, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more. But I was pretty surprised about how much the Clippers got in return for him. Not, he was worth that return. I just wasn't sure that he would net that return.
Right.
Number 3, this one's a little bit more under the radar, but I think he's a perfect fit. I really, really, really like Ayo Dosunmu to the Wolves. That is a position that they needed. He's a player that's having a career year. He fits exactly what Minnesota was looking for off of their bench. So I was excited about that one. Number 2, you already mentioned it, but Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Jazz. To me, that is a moment where they are trying to solidify themselves from going for, and obviously, we know what's been going on with the Jazz, and I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But, they are trying to legitimize themselves from a tanking team and a rebuilding team to a team that actually has pieces to start competing for something, whether that's a championship, whether that is, a playoff appearance, or even just getting into the play-in tournament. This to me was a move that the Jazz are trying to get more serious. And then number 1 for me, head and shoulders, James Harden to the Cavs. I really love that move. I'm sure you're going to have that somewhere on your list as well. But to me, I know the playoff shortcomings are there, but at the same time, they immediately get better trading Darius Garland for James Harden. James Harden also having an incredible season this year, averaging his most points per game since his last scoring title, still top of the league in assists per game, near the top of the league in assists per game. So he rounds out my top 5 at number 1.
So I'm just going to show you my notes. It's probably coming in reverse. But we had 4 of the same ones.
Okay.
I actually didn't have the James Harden one. That's the one that I didn't have that you had. So I had Zubac, Ayo, McCain, and Triple J. I guess made my homer pick and not Amir Coffey. That wasn't my homer pick. My homer pick was Kobe White to the Hornets in that deal. And the funny thing is, I'm not even out on the James Harden deal, and I don't know why I didn't include that. I guess it was just me knowing maybe that would separate us a little bit. But we're 4 for 4 as far as the other ones go. So I guess we could start with the James Harden trade, because the terms of the James Harden trade and how the James Harden trade came about. The Clippers had a big win, I want to say, on a Friday or a Saturday. It was Friday, because they came to Phoenix that next day. They might have lost. Whatever it was, they were here. Actually, I think they lost. They came to Arizona, and James Harden was courtside at Arizona State. They're supposed to play the Suns the next day, and then we find out James Harden is out for personal reasons. And we took the high road and we're like, look, man, these guys love playing basketball. I hope everything is okay with James Harden. And we still don't know what the personal reasons were, but we find out in the next 24, 36 hours that he and the Clippers are working on finding a trade. And it came up pretty soon that it was going to be the Cavs was going to be Darius Garland. And we've talked so much about the Cavs postseason shortcomings and the fact that even to this point in his career, Donovan Mitchell has not been out of the second round. He's played on some number 1 seeds in Cleveland and in Utah. And the way I saw that trade, I liked it for both sides as far as the Clippers getting the financial flexibility they want for the big picture. And the Cavs, you can't do the exact same thing you've done in years past and expect a different result. That's just what it came down to. And, the idea of a backcourt of a guy who's 6'1" and a guy who's listed at 6'2" and Donovan Mitchell, I know that James Harden's defense is what it is, and we know this, or at least on ball. But to go from 6'1", 6'2" to 6'5", 6'2" is not insignificant as far as that goes with what the Cavs did. And they had the quote of the post-deadline so far. They're like, no practice, we're just hooping off of vibes right now. And they look good out there together. And to think that this All-Star break is coming at the right time for them to really kind of gel, I don't necessarily think that makes them a favorite in the Eastern Conference, but it makes them an unknown because you can't really put a limit on their ceiling because we haven't seen this before.
Yeah, I think for the Cavs, I give them credit because there were earlier in the season, there was a lot of the reports of they still believe in their core 4 of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. And you understand why they feel that way. They had the best record in the Eastern Conference for basically the entire season last year, and then another playoff shortcoming. They come back this season. They didn't get to necessarily see everybody at full strength because Garland had been in and out of the lineup. Mobley had been in and out of the lineup. So you could fall back, if you're their front office, you can fall back on the idea of we haven't been at full strength. Max Strus still hasn't even made his debut this year. Different guys that are in the key players in their rotation had not been fully healthy. But I give them the credit for realizing that their ceiling probably wasn't as high as they thought or wanted it to be. and decided, okay, we need to make a move right now. And I still like Darius Garland, solid player. I don't know what's going on with the toe thing. That's a little bit sketchy. He's been dealing with that for, it feels like basically a full calendar year now.
That's about a year.
Still not healthy. On the Clippers side, and this kind of ties into the Zubats deal, which we can kind of connect those dots after this. But It's like to focus on the Cavs specifically. It does not seem like Darius Garland is going to be playing at his highest capability, probably at any point this season. Like, it doesn't feel far fetched to say that because this toe injury has lingered for so long. Where the Cavs right now feel like there is an opening to win the Eastern Conference, get over the hump, get to the NBA Finals. And as we saw with the Pacers last year, anything can happen once you get there. They took the Thunder all the way to Game 7, and who knows what happens if Halliburton doesn't get hurt, right? So the Cavs are trying to capitalize on that momentum, on that opportunity. They go and get James Harden, who obviously is known for his playoff shortcomings. I mean, the guy has never been to an NBA Finals. Seems to kind of have luck go the other way every single time. Right. Sorry, yes. As the main guy, as one of the main guys. Sorry, yeah. Yes, of course.
We forget. We forget about that.
Yeah. As the main guy or one of the main guys, and now he is someone who is playing some of his best basketball. In the latter stages of his career, like I said, averaging his most points per game since his last scoring title. He's still top 5 in the league in assists per game. He is somebody that can just make offense work. He's another player that, teams have to focus on to take pressure off of Donovan Mitchell, because obviously Jared Allen and Evan Mobley aren't necessarily, primary scorers, go-to scorers. They're guys that kind of just find ways to get their offense and get their points in different ways. So now you have someone with James Harden alongside Donovan Mitchell who elevates you a step higher than Darius Garland did. Now, obviously, that closes the title window a little bit shorter, but I do think that it raises their ceiling in terms of how far they could get this year in the playoffs. I give them credit for going out and taking a big swing like that, because it would have been easy to sit on their hands and just say, hey, we'll see what just how far this younger core can take us. But getting a player like James Harden makes them better immediately, and I give them a lot of credit for going out and making that move.
What this kind of reminds me of, and obviously nothing's ever 1-for-1 comparison, but how Oklahoma City, and I'm comparing Oklahoma City to where Detroit is right now, how Oklahoma City 2 seasons ago, they were the best team in the West, but they just weren't ready yet. And they ran into a Mavs team who had made some moves and tweaked a couple things, and they actually got past them because the West was about to be Oklahoma City's for the taking, but they just weren't ready yet. And the Mavs were that team. I think they were the 4 seed that year, that in the second round got past the Thunder, just because the Thunder were the best team in the West all season, but they just weren't ready to make that leap. They needed to have that bump and bruise in the playoffs to get over the hump. So we talk so much about the East being wide open, and it is, and it's not even disrespect to the Pistons, who I think are very legit. Flawed, but legit. Every team in the Eastern Conference is flawed. And I think the Cavaliers kind of saw that window. And I like what you pointed out as far as Mobley and Allen. And I think Mobley, people kind of joke around about him being like capped at 18-10. That's what you're going to get from him.
18-8.
18-8, right? So like this guy, though, now plays with a playmaker in James Harden, who was one of the best playmakers in league history. So it's not just saying he's never played with a playmaker like James Harden. Very few people have ever played with a playmaker like James Harden. So, we saw it so much with Zubats. We saw it with Clint Capella. We've seen it with guys throughout his career. When they start developing that chemistry, and I guess my big question, I'm curious as far as it goes with this team, are they going to have a long enough runway? We know that Mobley's out of the lineup right now doing his injury stuff, and he's had the calves and stuff like that. Calf injuries this year. But will they have enough time to develop that chemistry on the court? Because, and honestly, like if they get a favorable matchup in the first round, that could factor in to developing that chemistry. But yeah, you make a swing when you make a swing. It doesn't matter to me that James Harden is 10 years older than Darius Garland, which is crazy to say out loud. But you take a swing because this iteration of this team probably increased their chances to make it out of the East from, somewhere between 5 and 10% to maybe somewhere between 15 and 20%, which when you get a chance to do that, you do that.
Yeah, we can go back and forth on like the nitty gritty of how it makes them better and everything like that. But like the bottom line is, if I were to just ask you point blank, like, do you believe in the Cavs' chances of getting to the NBA Finals more now than you did before they made the Darius Garland trade? What would your answer be?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
So
yes.
that's how you know that they made the right move, at least in the short term. And, Donovan Mitchell's young enough in the long term, and obviously Mobley's still young. Jared Allen is, still on the right side of 30. It's they still have some youth there where like James Harden doesn't completely limit their championship window to this year, championship or bust, or NBA finals or bust. Like there's still some wiggle room there. But I just think that it made them so much better immediately that's why it's my favorite move of the trade deadline.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you kind of teased it already to talk more about from the Clippers lens. They bring in Darius Garland and then they part ways with Ivica Zubac. Some teams are making offers for him. Seems like, what are they doing? Because I don't think that anybody that's behind them is going to be kind of them and Portland in that 9-10 range. So they'll probably still make the play-in tournament regardless, because everybody beyond that is kind of focusing on the future and tanking, so to speak. But they part ways with Zubac. They get Benedict Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson from the Pacers. Pacers are going to be a force next season. So great big picture move from Indiana. But Mathurin gets a new home. Isaiah Jackson goes to the Clippers. And I'm really curious to see what it means for them as far as what they're doing in the big picture altogether.
The thing that shocks me the most about that deal, I'm pretty shocked that the Pacers left any sort of window of unprotection on that 2026 first round pick. So for those that are listening that don't know, they traded, it was Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, a 2026 first round pick protected 1 through 4 and 10 through 30. So if that pick lands in the 5 to 9 range, the Clippers get that first round pick. As of right now, the Pacers, I believe, are projected to get the second pick, but we've seen under the new lottery odds what that means. And it doesn't mean much, because we haven't seen one of those teams in the bottom of the standings win the lottery basically since they created the new lottery system. I mean, back-to-back years, we've had teams with less than 2% chance to win the number 1 pick, end up winning the number 1 pick. So that's a pretty risky move on the Pacers side to even leave a little bit of I'm shocked that they couldn't just get that down to lottery protected. If it's outside the top 14, sure, take it. You can have our pick. But there's a window there between 5 and 9 where if the Clippers get that pick, they're going to end up with a hell of a player in a really good draft class this year. And on top of that, they also got an unprotected 2029 first round pick. So I was kind of surprised by how much the Pacers gave up, but at the same time, and again, to talk about it from a Celtics fan perspective, I thought that Zubac would have been the perfect center for Boston to go after. But once I saw the price, I was like, okay, they didn't have the assets to make that happen.
Right.
But that's the perfect type of center. I think he's one of the most underrated bigs in the league. For him to go to play with Tyrese Haliburton next year, that projected starting lineup of, Hallie and Andrew Nembhard and Pascal Siakam and Zubac and either Aaron Nesmith, or potentially fill in one of these, stud prospects, whether that's a Darren Peterson, whether that's an AJ DeBonsa. That's a scary, scary, scary starting lineup in Eastern Conference that, like we said, still feels like it's pretty wide open. So I like the move for Indiana. I also like the move because I like the return that the Clippers got, especially after trading James Harden. You can kind of see they're trying to get younger over on that side. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard is still their guy. It sounds like they turned down a bunch of offers at the trade deadline for him after they had moved those other 2 guys. So, that was a move. The Zubac move was one that I really liked the way that things shook out for both sides of that deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's interesting to think about how that goes. And again, I think it's a great opportunity for Benedict Mathurin specifically. We've been high on him, not just because it's an NBA Soundsystem Canada podcast, but just that we've seen what he did and what he's done at the NBA level. Him being a microwave, had big moments throughout the finals run last year as well, but obviously just wasn't a big picture thing as far as that goes. I guess where we should go now, I guess the one trade that I had that you didn't have, and it's a little weird because, he's not ready to play yet, and it cost Colin Sexton, who was a big culture shifter in Charlotte. And since we last talked, the Hornets have thrust themselves into the Eastern Conference play-in tournament picture and have looked like one of the better teams in the NBA, and they are one of the better teams in the NBA when their starting lineup is healthy or not suspended. But thinking about that and bringing in Kobe White, a guy who's from the state of North Carolina, a guy who we've seen dominate as a scorer, I think that's just an exciting thing for that franchise, and they continue to build something impressive. And again, for me, I think that I relinquished being an actual fan of the team a while ago, but also I'm still somebody who was invested in them being successful, because when the Hornets play well, then people in my hometown are happy, and they've had plenty of reasons to not be happy over the past 10 years. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I like that move too. I mean, just getting a microwave scorer off the bench like that, because I wouldn't expect them to change up that starting lineup. Like you said, it's, the LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Moussa Diabate. They're what, like 13-1 now as a starting lineup?
These 2 losses now. They lost to Detroit, so like 13-2, like 14-2. But that's
13-2. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, Hornets are surging. Things are looking up in the Buzz City. And I do think that is a move that, helps make them a little bit more competitive in terms of like potentially being able to get out of the play-in tournament. And, who knows what that turns into in the first round? Like, are they going to take the Pistons to 7 games and win that series? Like, probably not. But that's a team that could definitely be competitive in a first round series. And it would be great to see a lot of the young guys on that team get some real playoff experience like that.
No, 100%. And we don't have to talk too much about that, but I agree completely with that. And I'm curious to see just how much they can continue to surge once the season goes on. But the other ones that we kind of talked about, probably the biggest name or the biggest surprise, and I mentioned as far as it looking weird, but Jaren Jackson Jr. to Utah. And this is a two-parter because we can kind of fold in their strategies to close the season. But I was surprised to see that they made that swing, but thinking moving forward that they can go this jumbo lineup once Walker Kessler is healthy again next season, if they plan on having him long-term, playing Lowry at the 3, which we've seen him do before, Lowry Marketing at the 3. He did it in Cleveland, which is crazy to think that was even a stop in his career at one point. But the Jazz are going for it. And they at one point we talked about this franchise and that they didn't necessarily have like a blue chip guy to build around. But Keontae George has looked like he could be that guy. Ace Bailey, we talked a lot about his ceiling, his potential down the line. And then who's scoring on Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler if that's what they have in the front court moving forward next year?
Yeah, the thing that excited me about this trade so much is like I had sneaky like really enjoyed watching the Jazz play this year just because Keontae George had been so much fun. And like obviously you knew what you had in Lauri Markkanen. And it stinks that Walker Kessler ended up getting hurt early in the season and then ruled out for the entire year. But like you could start to see the pieces come together. Like Isaiah Collier, really good point guard off the bench. Bryce Sensabaugh, good scorer off the bench. Like you said, Ace Bailey starting to come into his own. They're still trying to see and figure out what they have in Cody Williams. But like between Keontae and Lowry and Walker Kessler when he's healthy, you started to see the pieces like, okay, this is no longer just like a bunch of misfit prospects that you're trying to figure out what you have. Like you're starting to see the resemblance of a team. And Will Hardy's a great coach, despite, like we said, like intentionally tanking at this point. Like let's just call it.
Have they revolutionized tanking?
I think they have. They found the loophole, but like this move, the deadline, probably the most out of nowhere, had no reporting behind it whatsoever. It felt like every single report out of Memphis was that the Grizzlies want to build around Jaren Jackson and trade Ja Morant, and then they ended up trading Jaren Jackson and being stuck with Ja Morant. But this, to me, like I said, like in the quick rundown, like it legitimizes what the Jazz are trying to do with this rebuild, in that after this year, they are trying to get more serious and getting back into the play-in tournament range, playoff range. And I think that with Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, what we've seen from Keontae George, Walker Kessler back in that front court, like I've seen enough to think that, okay, the Jazz could actually be a competitive basketball team next year. Now, does that mean that they are going to, be challenging the Thunder and the Nuggets and whoever else to come out of the Western Conference? No, but
they're a playoff team.
It's exactly like that's and that's where this trade takes them. That's the direction this trade takes them, and it goes from being a team that is always basically trying to come in last, basically since they traded Donovan Mitchell, to now this is a team that will make a playoff. Will make the playoffs, be able to give somebody a series in the playoffs, get a load of experience for these young guys, and you can kind of start to see the vision of what Utah and what Will Hardy and what Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge are doing out there.
Yeah, 100%. It kind of feels like, again, using the Oklahoma City Thunder example, but where they were during those years where like Al Horford was getting DNPs and they were trading for Kemba Walker's contract and all of that. We are there in that Jazz timeline as far as what they're trying to do. And I think the Thunder are one of one case. They did it quicker and faster than anybody else, but it is proven. Feel how you want to feel about that or not. And for those of you who aren't really tapped into the Jazz and are wondering how we're asking if they're revolutionizing taking, they will play their guys. They're not resting them until the fourth quarter. So it doesn't matter how hot Lauri Markkanen or Jaren Jackson Jr. is playing. They're not playing in the fourth quarter. It doesn't matter what the score is, how close or how far apart they are from the other team. And Will Hardy the other day, like, Were you planning on playing those guys in the fourth quarter? No, I wasn't. And they still beat the Miami Heat on the road, which says a lot about the Heat. Even Bam Adebayo said, we got to find a way to beat teams that are not trying to win. That being said, as we wrap up here on this trade deadline recap discussion, because I know you and I were on the same page about Ayo Dosunmu, I think he adds a lot to that Wolves second unit. They needed some guard play, and lucky for them, Mike Conley got dealt again, so they get to bring him back thanks to the Andrew Bogut rule. But the Raptors were active as well, parted ways with Ochai Agbaji. Bring in Trace Jackson Davis, who basically made his impact felt pretty quickly with the Raptors team. One of those in the margin moves that could come in handy for the Raptors as they settle in wherever they fall in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. I think TJD is a good acquisition.
Yeah, I agree. He's just a solid backup center. Like, he's someone that plays smart basketball. He knows, where to be. He seems like a Raptors type player. Just kind of like doing the gritty things that it takes to make an impact in the limited minutes that he's going to get. And you know what? Hey, like, Jakob Poeltl has not been, the model of a clean bill of health this season.
Yeah.
Colin Murray-Boyles, hopefully he can figure out this thumb thing that's been going on for a couple weeks over the All-Star break. Hopefully that's enough time for him to get back and get healthy, because he was playing at a really, really high level before that. Sandro Mamukelashvili has been awesome off the bench as well. Nailed it.
Pronunciation was crazy.
Clean, good looks. But has been great off the bench this year as well. So, like, it doesn't hurt to have that depth, especially with how in and out of the lineup that Poeltl has been. And I also think that, like, that was a move to me that it gives them a little bit more flexibility this offseason when they inevitably probably try and deal Jakob Poeltl's contract somewhere else. So it does give them someone a little bit younger in that front court to, kind of give them a safety net if they do decide to part ways with their starting center right now.
Yeah, 100%. And this team, in some ways, I mean, depending on where you stood, and you and I were on the side of them being solid coming into this year. I know there were people thinking that this team was not going to be good at all, and they were going to be maybe a play-in tournament team, but they firmly cemented themselves as a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference at this point. 2 All-Stars on the team and a lot of All-Star representation throughout the weekend, which we will discuss on our bonus All-Star episode of NBA Soundsystem Canada. But I say that to say that All-Star break could not come at a better time for a lot of teams in the NBA, because there are a lot of nicks and bumps and bruises that you get a week off of games, and you can come back unless you're one of the guys who is performing at All-Star Weekend. So with that being said, we will wrap here talking about trade deadline stuff, but keep it locked in with us here on NBA Soundsystem Canada, because we've got a little bit to talk about with NBA All-Star Weekend 2026 out in Inglewood, California, not far from KI, because there are some things that you probably don't even understand as far as what's going on, because we are still figuring out how the All-Star Games are going to work this year. So as always, we appreciate you tapping in to NBA Soundsystem Canada. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at NBA Soundsystem Canada. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. And on YouTube, NBA Soundsystem Canada is the handle there as well. For Kyle Irving, I'm Gil McGregor. We will catch you back here in just a second if you keep it locked in with us.